So I discovered something interesting that happens to my raspberry vines when I tip layer them. Come check this out. Join me in the chaos. All right, so here's my raspberry vine. And then you'll notice on my raspberry vine, I tip layer the two long canes. So one was there, one was there. And I tip layer those probably about, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And look what's happening. It's branching like crazy. Why? Because by tip layering it, I've told it that those ends are going to become new plants. And I don't know if it's, yeah, I actually have some new growth down here, which means it probably has roots. I'm not going to dig it up because I don't want to disturb it, because I started with just one raspberry plant right here, right in front of my house. And sometimes people veer away from the sidewalk, and there's a good distance. So I want to grow raspberries all along here. And as you can see, I'm kind of spacing them out with those long canes. And so the idea is here is starting off with one. Eventually I'm going to turn one into three, and then hopefully I'll have a few long ones and I can go this way, or I might even just take some cuttings. We'll see what happens. But this is a thorny variety that I put in front. My non-thorny varieties I'm keeping in the back, just to remind people where the edges are, if you know what I mean. But look how much this is branching. I mean, this is branching really heavily. So it's kind of a fun side effect. It's an awesome side effect of layering. I always figured that I had to make two choices. I either had to tip layer or take cuttings, and by taking cuttings, then you're telling the plant to branch out. But apparently when you tip layer, you tell the plant that that's not a terminal end anymore. That terminal end's now turning into roots. And it knows that if it wants to grow more, if it wants to elongate and cover more area, it's gonna have to do that through branching. So that's one way to know that your tip layers are successful. It's when you start seeing branching happening, because that means those hormones that are being sent to those tips, those auxin hormones that tell the branch to elongate, those aren't just going to that terminal section anymore. They are dividing throughout a lot of those other positions, and that's telling that elongation to happen, and it's telling branches to basically grow. So that's a really good signal if you want to learn to speak plant. You do something like tip layer a raspberry plant, and all of a sudden you start seeing all these other positions just branching out like crazy. That's telling you that hormones are no longer going to those tips, making those tips get longer and longer. Those hormones are being divided throughout the plant. So I thought that was interesting when I walked by, and that occurred to me that that's what was happening. Kind of cool. And you can tell, if you look at the color, you'll see the color here is really dark, and you'll see some spots here. I think that's just from heat. So excessive heat is causing some bleaching of those leaves right there. But generally you can see how these leaves are all darker, which means they're older. This stuff right here that's really light, that's a very new growth. Like, I was just out here 2 or 3 days ago, and these didn't even exist yet. So this is all like growth that's less than a couple days old. And even this is pretty young here. That whole piece right there is probably about a day or two old. That piece, same thing. Comes on pretty quick. So I hope that helps you to know that you're safe tip layering your raspberries or blackberries or whatever types of bramble type berry vines. They all pretty much do the same thing. Thanks for watching.